So this one's called Cows by the Tree Line. This one I actually started with a deck of cards and I embedded it into the acrylic paint. And I started with the cards because I had a fun idea that when you could see through the paint, you could see these little hearts and diamonds and stuff like that. So I liked the texture, I was having a lot of fun with it. I made this bridge where it's like when you shuffle and you're mixing cards together. Actually put the boxes in, so I actually have two decks of cards. I have a red and blue ones that are bicycle cards. I painted some of the card symbols on here. These two paintings were some of the first ones I did. This one, I had a lot of fun with it. I wanted a really high contrast because when the sun was setting, it had a really dark outline because the sun was pretty low. And it just had this cast shadows that I loved. There was the mucky mud that the cows had tramped through, and there was like hay mixed in there. So I didn't really want a clean brown. I wanted this kind of rusty, dirty, green hay kind of color going on. And his dog is always with him. So when I had him next to the fence looking at his cows with the dog, I was just like, I gotta take a picture and I gotta try to paint this. And it was just so fun because it's just, really creates that feeling of peace, and as you're just looking out in the sunset, you know, after a hard day's work, and I really want to express that. I have him in his like working clothes. I don't have him in like, you know, nice tailored suit or something like that because this is what he wears every day. This one pairs really well with my other one over here. I did these very close to the same time, so that's why they're very similar. These were great ones because I learned how to make. This is actually some of the first ones I learned how to make canvas frames. So I have wood, I learned how to use quarter round board and wrap the canvas around. I started with acrylics on both of these. I gessoed them myself and having oil paint on top. This one has the same as little as the other one where I have the railing. It's very simple. I have the light coming off just a little bit. It's just that little bit of detail that helps really bring out a lot of these pieces. You have this really old farm barn, like hay barn in the back that's been there since like before I was born. And this one, the real challenge for me was to get the cement, but also to really make the hay bales look like hay bales and look realistic without painting each individual brush stroke, which has never really been my style. And also learning how to paint like super thin with like a palette knife and just get those really, really thin lines. There is some brushwork in here. I wanted the snowy, misty mountains as I was going, but I have all these really vibrant colors on top of this to kind of express that it's still fun. There's lots of snow, but there's a lot of color in here as well. But yeah. This one was for my grandpa. He died in 2015, working on the farm. And this one I did as a memorial coin because we always grew up collecting silver dollars because it was this save for the future, have something like money in the bank mentality that I was taught with those core values as a young kid. And I felt like this was a fun way to remember my grandpa, having his own silver dollar Liberty coin, having the year he died in here. And I really liked having the In God We Trust. He was very faithful man, like very religious, just very great guy. I mean, we miss him a lot. This one, I took a picture as I was going to the cabin, and it was just really funny to me having the cows blocking the road and how you gotta honk to get them to move out of the way because they're so used to the road being theirs and it's their right of way that they will sometimes just stare at you and be like, I'm not moving for you. So I took this picture, captured that moment, and I really liked how all the lines collected together to create a central, like bringing your eye to the center with the atmospheric perspective. This one I did acrylic, but I also used a little bit of spray paint on there because I wanted this yellow haze look. And then I painted even more on top of it, pushing and pulling where I wanted those colors to stand out. Having lots of fun with the little bits of grass coming off the dirt road. It's not a classic dirt road. I kept it pretty pink. It was just really fun. And I had a lot of fun with this one. It was a challenge for me to also do a 2x2 feet, so that makes it perfectly square, which changed your design elements a little bit instead of a landscape or a classic like 3x4 ratio. So This one was a personal challenge to me and something I had a lot of fun doing. This one is with my grandpa riding the tractor. All my entire life, my grandpa had this blue, like light blue hat and like the light blue, almost like mechanics jumpsuits that he'd wear to bark, like milk cows, you know, doing dirty jobs and stuff like that. So I really liked having this lighter sky blue and having in the tractor as well. The wheels I did multicolored to have a little bit of that feel of like how they get really dirty and, you know, they get wear and tear on them. And I had a lot of fun. I always have to incorporate like some really strong colors, and so I had a lot of fun doing this. Having a simple structure of the tractor, but you can still tell it's a tractor. I have a lot of memories of riding or on the tractor with Grandpa or seeing him in the tractor, so this was a fun memory for me, as well as I think a memory for a lot of people, anyone who's had a grandpa or somebody. So this one, like the one that have the cards underneath, the playing cards, this one I was mixing up the idea of having a puzzle where you have a farm on top of it and doing those puzzle games. This one I put puzzle pieces in it and then painted on top. I wanted the textures of the puzzles, but kind of like a mix-up of a classic farm puzzle piece. And a lot of them, I didn't just throw them in, I purposely placed them. I wanted some of the shadows and some of the lighter areas and the darker areas. Having this flat red, but having the puzzle pieces added textures, that was fun for me, and a different type of challenge for me, trying to learn how to work with materials that I hadn't worked with before. And the classic red barn, this is the only red barn. So this one is 3 by 4 feet. It's one of the biggest paintings I have. I had masonite board. I did wood strips on the back to also support the masonite board so it doesn't bow, and I made the frame itself. I started with a acrylic base and marked out the stuff, and then the rest of it is oil. This I did a lot of it with palette knife, but I also did a lot with brushwork. Starting with like the hay and stuff like that, I would use brushes, and then I would use a palette knife and kind of bring it down to make this kind of stringy look. To have these hay bales stacked together, I thought it was really fun. I had a lot of fun with like the rusty tin roof and these these wood pillars that look like they're about to fall over, and like the door that's half hanging off. This is a really old barn. I think it just has some hay bales and stuff underneath it. So, and they also have a goat pen. This is my uncle's daughter and how she was feeding the goats. So I had the goats coming around. I had a lot of fun doing the texture of the goats, but not keeping them super detailed, and then doing some texture on the tractors as well to kind of give it that illusion of being dusty without like individually putting like dots on it. This one I had to plan out a lot, and I had to draw and sketch a lot before to plan out where the tractors were going and how they were in a relationship to each other. So yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this one. This one took me about 30 hours to do, so it's also the one that took me the longest, and it's also one of my biggest paintings that I have here. So this one I used on my invitation for my art show. It was one of my most successful pieces because of how much texture I got into this. I have tons of layers of acrylic underneath this with drippings of acrylic medium that was pouring on, so I have it very thick. It'd be really interesting if anybody ever like took a slice out of it to see how thick it was. And then I used a lot of palette knife work as well. This, I have a lot of wax medium in it, which is why it's not shiny, but it's matte. Having these textures was really important to me. Having a cool relationship and a warm relationship was really fun. Having the oil drums, they were rusty, they're old, they've been there since even, I think my mom was a kid, you know, and having these fuel lines coming out so they could refuel the tractors, refuel four-wheelers. So this was a well-used object on the farm because they have acres, so you got to get around. So the snow itself was also really dirty. It has that snow, but then you have creatures and animals and whatever, roosters walking through it. So I have some texture. I have the white on top, but I have a nice dark underneath, wanting to get that muddy look to it. Using a lot of wax to make sure it kept the thickness, but also keeping the matte coloring as well. So this one is 4 by 4 feet. This one I actually built with the frame first and then attached the canvas onto the back of it. This was new for me. I had to learn how to do it and learn how to work with materials. This one, because of the canvas's ability to be like stretched, I didn't want to overwork it, so I always wanted to do something really light on this. This one I had a very abstract, almost like a Japanese brushstroke style for the mountains, and keeping it really simple. This was on the road out from Grandma's, and so I wanted to capture just, there's a lot of hours I spent looking out the window as you're driving to and from Grandma's, and having this road, but not like the yucky part of the road, but having the weeds and stuff like that was really fun for me. So.
Thank you all for coming and supporting me, and the ones that can make it and the ones that couldn't. There's a lot of people that helped me set up and video, and I just want to thank you all for all your support and love, and I'm very grateful, and hope you enjoyed the show.